Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Roots and Algorithms. My name is Amina. I'm the host and founder of this podcast. First of all, happy International Girls in ICT Day to all the amazing girls and women in STEM. The day may have passed, but its message still stands. That's why I can't think of a better month to launch this podcast. So, I don't really consider myself a storyteller, right? In fact, I don't talk much. Okay, maybe if I'm just meeting you for the first, second, or third time. I know that sounds funny for someone hosting a podcast, but hear me out. Honestly, I've never sat down and thought, oh, I'm going to tell my story. I have a story that will move people. 5 years ago this happened, 10 years ago that happened. I never thought about that. But what I have done is live through moments. Moments that didn't even feel significant when they were happening, until much later in life. Because I've come to realize something about stories. Stories don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they're just patterns, and it takes time before you can connect them. And that's why I'm doing this. Not because I'm a storyteller, but because I do believe everyone has a story. So here is mine. I grew up at a time when technology in Nigeria was still pretty much new. Back then, when your phone rang, you had to actually pick it up to know who was calling. No caller ID, no unknown numbers. Gen Z, if you're listening to this, I know you're probably confused. But that was our reality. Technology back then wasn't this loud, flashy thing where you have iOS 16 today, your home device is online. There was no on-the-go internet connection. But somehow, it didn't matter. It was something quiet, mysterious, almost magical. And that was what pulled me in. Because growing up, I wasn't surrounded by tech conversations. No one sat me down and said, this is a career path. There were no coding bootcamps, no YouTube tutorials, no women in tech hashtags trending. For me, there was just curiosity and a feeling. I wanted to understand what was behind the screen. Because one thing about me then and now is that I've always been inquisitive, but not in a loud way. Not the kind of inquisitive that asks a lot of questions. I observe, I watch patterns, I watch people. If something worked or didn't, I immediately ask myself, why does this work the way it does? I mean, a lot of people that know me will say I will try to fix my problems on my own. 99% of the time I fail before asking someone for help. I know it has its good days and bad days, but somehow I have made it work over the years. I also think growing up with an extended family much older than me influenced how much I watch rather than ask questions. And looking back now, I realize something interesting. That mindset is actually very similar to how people work in tech. Because in tech, you debug, you test, you fail quietly, and then you try again. Without even realizing it, I was already thinking like someone in tech. I just didn't have the language for it yet. Like most kids, I went through the phases of what I wanted to be when I grew up. Doctor, lawyer, at a point I wanted to even be a pilot. But in the midst of all those phases, one thing remained with me, tech. I remember spending my entire days waiting for my cousins to take a break so I could play solitaire and Minesweeper on the HP PC, or just wander around, clicking away, doing random things, trying to figure out the intricacies behind the screen. The desktop did not even have internet connection at first, but it was still a favorite part of my days. Later on, when it got connected to the internet, I became the girl that was obsessed with Mavis Beacon. I will play every single typing game on that app. Looking back now, I realized that was my first structured introduction to tech. Now let me slow down here, because context matters. I am a northern Nigerian woman. And if you're not from northern Nigeria or you've never lived within its cultural expectations, let me tell you something. For the most part, your dreams are not always just yours. They're weighed against tradition, measured through family reputation, filtered through gender expectations and what people will say. From a very young age, most northern girls are subtly and directly taught that we should not be too loud, we should not be too curious, we should not be too ambitious, we should not be too visible. Especially not in spaces that are technical, male-dominated, or public. Because at the end of the day, you are going to get married, have kids, and live life within the confinement of that. So even though I didn't really grow up in the North, these expectations remained in the nuances. They existed in the background, in the way I carried myself, in the way I even shrunk without realizing it. Now fast forward to post-secondary school. I graduated as an art student because I wasn't great at math. And at that time, it was almost impossible to do anything technical. Because as a science student, you study medicine, engineering, technology. As an art student, you study law, administration, social sciences. There was no in-between. And just like that, my tech dreams were quietly packed away. Not because I didn't care, but because the system was not flexible. So I later got accepted to study law for undergrad. Shocking, right? And honestly, at the time, it made sense. Law was respectable, safe, approved, but life had other plans. I ended up switching to a university that did not offer law, which looking back now, I don't even know why and how that happened. Anyway, for my first semester, my course was actually undecided. Even though I attended classes, it was an uncomfortable feeling because everyone around me seemed to know where they were going, but I didn't. Then one day, boom, everything changed. I found out I could study information systems. I still remember that feeling. It wasn't just excitement, it was a feeling of relief. Like the universe was telling me something. I wasn't wrong, I was just early. But choosing tech didn't erase the stereotypes, because there's a specific stereotype most women in tech face, that we are temporarily ambitious, as if our intelligence has an expiry date, as if marriage automatically deletes our skills, as if motherhood and code cannot coexist. And sometimes the doubt didn't just come from outside, it came from within. Because for the most part of school and growing up, I was the girl who sat at the back of the class because I didn't want to be seen. The girl who knew the answer but didn't raise her hand. The girl who avoided public speaking for as long as she could. But by the time I graduated, I knew something for sure. Tech wasn't a phase for me. Today, I look back to that young girl who was obsessed with playing solitaire and now working in a space where technology meets policy, security, and people. Because once I stepped into the tech ecosystem, everything changed. Not overnight, but gradually. Through rooms I entered, people I met, conversations I was part of. And slowly, I started unlearning silence. I have also grown to learn that technology is not just science. It is policy, it is power, it is access, it is inclusion. It can also be exclusion, but that's a conversation for another podcast. Also, being part of women-focused internet spaces showed me something else. That women are not just users of technology. We are contributors. We are decision shapers. And for someone who once avoided raising her hand in class, now sitting in rooms contributing to conversations about the future of the internet, that shift is not something I take lightly. However, one thing that stood out for me in almost a decade of research, public speaking and applications, is the limited publicity Northern women in tech get on mainstream media. Every time I come across an Instagram handle or LinkedIn account belonging to a Northern woman in tech, I think to myself, how come these names don't pop up when I Google Nigerian women in tech? I always wondered, could it be a case of subtle stereotypes making these amazing women hide behind the scenes? Are their stories hidden behind some firewall that's not easily accessible? Or am I searching the wrong platform? And that's what this podcast is about. Roots and Algorithms is more than just a podcast. It is documentation, it is resistance, it is visibility. Sometimes I sit and think about how many girls are exactly where I used to be. Curious, capable, but quiet. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack exposure, permission, representation. And that's why visibility matters. Not for validation, but for possibility. Because you cannot become what you cannot see. So if you are listening to this and you are a girl who was told tech is not for her, a woman who thinks she's too late, someone whose curiosity was once silenced, let me tell you this. Your story is not over. Sometimes the path doesn't disappear. It just waits for you to return, wiser, braver, and louder. Because as Northern women in tech, we have to step up to stand out. This is Roots and Algorithms, where culture meets code, and where stories like mine and yours finally get told. And maybe, just maybe, the next girl listening to this won't wait as long as I did to step forward. If you are an urban woman in tech and you want your story to be told by you, reach out to us and we will make it happen. Until next time, this is Roots and Algorithms. Let's change the narrative.